They say revenge is a dish best served cold. Well, new place. He had that effortless confidence that made you want to lean in closer. Smart. I honestly thought I'd hit the jackpot. Compared to the flaky guys I'd dated before, Dean seemed grounded and driven. My friends were jealous. Relationships have rough patches, right? But back then, I didn't know what was coming. I didn't realize that what I saw as a rough patch was actually Dean unraveling in real time. One even called him the unicorn, as in too good to be real. But love, especially young love, makes you overlook a lot. You cling to the early memories, the sweet gestures, the laughs, the promises. I didn't want to admit to myself that the man who used to walk across campus in the rain just to see me was slowly becoming a stranger in our own home. Dean would miss a lecture here or there. No big deal, right? Everyone skips once in a while. But then it became a pattern. He stopped setting alarms. He'd sleep through classes or just not bother going at all. When I asked about it, he'd brush it off with a joke or some excuse about how lectures were a waste of time or that he was teaching himself better at home. I was holding up both ends of the relationship and barely holding myself together. Every conversation became a minefield. If I brought up chores or money or asked him to help out more, he'd sulk or twist it around like I was attacking him.
He'd say I didn't appreciate how hard things were for him.
He was clearly struggling, but he refused to take responsibility for any of it, and somehow I kept letting it slide. But the truth is, I wasn't ready to see the mask for what it was. Supportive. I told myself the man I'd fallen for was still in there, just buried under some temporary rough patch. I made excuses for him to my friends, lied to my parents, pretended everything was fine. I was exhausted all the time, rushing from lectures to work, from work to studying, then back home to a guy who did absolutely nothing. He wouldn't even wash a plate. The house was a disaster. Dirty laundry piled up, dishes in the sink. Food wrappers everywhere. I knew I was the only one putting in the effort. I missed that version of him. And so I clung to hope, even when it made me miserable. Still, I stayed. Because when you've invested so much time, energy, and love into someone, walking away feels like failure. Like maybe you didn't try hard enough, and I wasn't ready to give up. I felt like I was living with a teenager, not a grown man who once spoke about business ventures and success. Funny, and that belief would cost me far more than I ever imagined. That's the thing with these slow declines. They're so gradual, you barely notice it until you're knee-deep in chaos, wondering how the hell you got there. And super attentive. He always seemed to have time for me, no matter how busy life got. We'd go for late-night walks after class, talk about our dreams. He started missing shifts, saying he was too stressed or burnt out from studying funny, considering he wasn't even going to class. Eventually, they let him go. Just like that, one day he had a job. The next, he didn't. And while he lived out his lazy gamer fantasy, guess who picked up the slack? Yep, me. And you know what he said when I asked what his plan was? Joke around while cooking pasta in our tiny shared kitchen. He was the guy who brought me coffee during late-night study sessions and surprised me with my favorite snacks when I had exams coming up. New people, new experiences, freedom. I wasn't expecting to fall in love so soon, but then I met him. He was everything I thought I wanted. Let's call him Dean. I served mine frosty and with interest. My ex thought he could cheat, steal my savings, and walk away with no consequences. What he didn't count on was that I had insider knowledge that would ruin his financial life. This isn't just a story of heartbreak. This is a masterclass in patient revenge. Buckle up, because I am about to show you how I turned 8 pounds into the best revenge money can buy. University was supposed to be one of the best times of my life. Dean was the definition of charming. He also worked part-time while studying something I really admired.
He wasn't afraid of hard work.
He had this big plan, get his business degree, launch his own company, and make something of himself. It all felt so grown-up and stable. I thought, wow, this guy really has it together. In the beginning, and he wasn't just about ambition, he was fun. We'd binge-watch series on my laptop, play silly board games, go out dancing even when we had early classes. He made me feel seen, appreciated, like a priority. I wasn't the only one caught up in the magic. He would talk about our future like it was a done deal. We joked about getting a dog, talked about maybe traveling after graduation. There was a comfort in it, a sense of stability I hadn't expected to find so early in life. So when things slowly started to change, I didn't panic right away. I thought it was just the pressure of uni, the occasional burnout everyone faces. In hindsight, the signs were there. But back then, I was all in. I believed in us. I believed in him. It didn't happen overnight. At first, it was little things. The job went next. I think the universe is telling me to focus on my passions. His passions, apparently, included sitting on the couch all day playing Xbox and browsing internet forums like it was a full-time career. I started working extra shifts. First 1 or 2, then doubles, sometimes triples. Worse than the mess was the emotional weight. I kept thinking he'd snap out of it. That this was just a phase, exam stress, depression maybe. I tried to be understanding. But deep down I knew this wasn't going to magically fix itself. I wanted the old Dean back, the one who showed up with coffee and made me feel like the most special person in the room. Looking back now, I don't know whether to feel pity for that younger version of me or to just scream at her to wake up. Not yet. You always think you'll know when it's time to leave. Like there'll be some big dramatic moment, a final straw that's so obvious, so unforgivable you'll just pack your bags and go. But when the cracks show up gradually, when you're knee-deep in excuses and emotional investment, the breaking point doesn't always feel like a bang. Instead, I walked into our flat to find him on the phone, whispering and grinning like a teenager with a crush. He didn't even notice me at first, but when he did, his face went pale. The way he scrambled to end the call, I didn't even need to ask. I knew. Sometimes it's a slow, painful unraveling until suddenly it all snaps. That it was his cousin, or an old friend, or literally anyone other than what I knew deep down it was. Packed up his things and moved out the next day. I later found out he'd already arranged to move in with her, his side chick. Maybe it was a glitch. Maybe he'd moved the money into another joint account. Anything that would make this make sense. And because his name was on the account too, it was perfectly legal. The same girl I'd noticed liking his posts and replying to his comments online. But nope, he admitted it. Like it was no big deal. Said he'd felt a connection with someone else, like that somehow justified everything. Great. I started looking into it and quickly realized it wasn't worth it. All funded by me. My hard work, my sacrifice. My safety, the result of countless sleepless nights and double shifts, and he'd taken it without hesitation, no remorse. No warning, just gone. Between filing fees, lawyer costs, and the time it would take, I'd probably spend more than I'd lost. And even if I won, enforcing a judgment would be another nightmare. Especially with someone as slippery as Dean. But they told me the same thing. Because it was a joint account, it wasn't a criminal matter. It was a civil issue. They recommended I take him to court. The cold, calculated, I will and you kind. A sleek gaming chair that probably cost more than our rent. He talked about his new Ford KTV like it was a work of art. Someone even asked him how he could afford it all, and his response? For me, it was the cheating. Right time, right place. The more my hands shook. Every gadget, every upgrade, every smug reply he posted online. It was all bought with the £5,000 he stole from our joint savings. And he was out here, parading it around like he was some sort of self-made man, and run down the clock on old accounts. He was so proud of that. Thought he was beating the system. I typed his username into a search bar. Dean was active on a few niche forums, mostly gaming and tech spaces. No mention of the relationship he'd just blown up. His shallow victories, I realized I had everything I needed to turn his life upside down. I still had his debt paperwork. I knew who he owed, and how much. I even had notes from when I'd helped him avoid those collectors. He trusted me with all of that. Funny thing about trust, it becomes a weapon in the hands of someone you've betrayed. No accountability. Just acting like his new life magically appeared without the blood, sweat, and tears I'd poured into ours. I wasn't just a broke, heartbroken student. I had experience. I'd temped every summer to help pay for uni, and one of those jobs had been at a debt collection agency. The kind that chases down people exactly like Dean. No, He'd always been a keyboard warrior, but now he had something to brag about. I came home one day after back-to-back shifts, exhausted and hoping for a quiet evening. Still, I wanted to be wrong. I wanted him to tell me I was being paranoid. The joint savings account. We'd opened it a while ago when we were still in the honeymoon phase. The heartbreak, the humiliation, the exhaustion, I felt it all harden into something else. It was supposed to be for travel, emergencies, future plans. Mostly, I'd been the one contributing, putting away money from my shifts, carefully building it up over time. Now I was the system. He threw in the occasional few £100, but it was my savings. My security net. He didn't apologize, didn't beg. Didn't even seem all that sorry. He just left. That should have been the worst part. But it wasn't. The next day, as I was trying to gather my thoughts and figure out how to move forward, something clicked in my brain. Refresh the page. Still zero. My stomach dropped. I logged into the account. Balance, £0. I stared at the screen, blinking. I called the bank immediately, hoping there had been some kind of mistake. But no, he had withdrawn every last penny. Just walked into a branch with his ID and took it all out. I felt physically sick. Next, I went to the police, hoping they could do something, anything. Civil court. I was devastated. Not just because of the money though, yeah, losing over $5,000 hurts, but because of what it represented. That account was my future. And while I was picking up the pieces of my life, he was online bragging about his new setup, his new gaming consoles, brand new flat-screen TV, flashy gadgets, and fancy furniture. That was the moment something inside me snapped. I wasn't just sad anymore. I was angry. And for the first time in my life, I wanted revenge. Grief has stages, right? Denial, anger, bargaining, all that. I skipped straight to rage, not the loud, screaming kind. I was still trying to process everything being cheated on, left behind, and robbed blind when curiosity got the better of me. And brag he did. There it was in plain text, post after post about his new setup, brand new Xbox, massive curved monitor. Had a bit of luck fall into my lap, a bit of luck. What he had was my money. It wasn't just the bragging. It was the way he talked about me, or rather, how he erased me completely. The more I scrolled, but then the rage turned into something else, clarity. See, Dean had no idea just how dangerous it was to cross someone who knows your weaknesses, especially someone like me. Back then, I'd actually helped him dodge a few debts. Showed him how to avoid phone calls, ignore letters, but now? As I stared at his posts, his smug smile, I didn't want an apology. I didn't want him back. I wanted justice. Better yet, I wanted karma. Delivered cold, with interest. And I was just the woman to make that happen? Some people get even by throwing drinks in faces. Others post passive-aggressive memes or block numbers and move on. Me? I planned a long game. One where every step was quiet, legal, and devastating. That job gave me a front-row seat to how the system worked. It was a grind, sure, but it paid well, and I learned things most people never bother to think about. Like how debt collection cycles work. What flags get accounts reactivated. And most importantly, how to reset the statute of limitations clock on old debts. Because I didn't just want to clap back, I wanted consequences. See, what Dean didn't realize, what he never took seriously, was that boring summer job I once had at a debt collection agency. Let me break that down real quick. I made a list, account numbers, outstanding balances, and contact info for every collector he owed money to. There were 6 of them in total. In the UK, if a creditor doesn't get a payment or acknowledgement of debt within 6 years, it becomes statute barred. I never pretended to be him. That would have been illegal. But I didn't have to. They couldn't disclose details, but they could accept payments. That means the debt still exists, but they can't legally enforce it anymore. Dean had spent years dodging his debts like it was a sport. He knew the deadline was close. He was counting down the months, even bragging about how close he was to being free. I didn't need to chase him. The system would do it for me. But here's the twist. If you make a payment, any payment, even just £1, that 6-year clock resets. There was no guarantee they'd act quickly. But knowing the industry like I did, I figured it was only a matter of time. Especially since he'd just gotten a new job, signed a new lease, and was suddenly back on the radar with all his flashy purchases. His name was active in all the right databases. I knew that, and I knew his exact timeline. Dean had spent months draining me financially, emotionally, physically. And now, with one carefully placed move, I'd given that energy a new direction. So I got to work. I pulled out the dusty box of paperwork I had tucked away from when I was managing his life for him: bills, statements, letters from creditors. I didn't check his forums every day or stalk his socials like some bitter ex. I just waited. He started a thread titled something like "Help, got a letter about court. What do I do?" And just for fun, his parents' address too, since I knew they'd still occasionally let him collect mail there. Again, they couldn't officially update his info unless he confirmed it, but the agents could make a note of it. All funded by stolen money, my stolen money. They had skip tracing tool systems that scanned for matches between addresses and account holders. If Dean used that new address anywhere else, ordering pizza, applying for broadband, whatever, it would trigger a match. And the letters would start flowing again. I called each one calm and polite. Told them I wanted to make a payment on behalf of a friend. One genius even advised him to not show up to court, claiming they couldn't prosecute him if he wasn't there. I paid the minimum on each £1 on most, and £1.50 on one stubborn account. £8.50 in total, pocket change. Every single payment reset the statute clock to 0, but I wasn't done. I also gave them his new address. The trap was set. His voice cracked when he said my name, told me he was scared. Said he didn't understand why the debts were coming back. He asked if I knew anything, like I was his personal crisis manager again. I sat back and waited. People think revenge means action, but sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is set a domino upright and walk away. It was a gamble, sure. And all it cost me was less than a tenner. I didn't tell anyone, not my friends, not my flatmates. I wanted it to be my secret. My quiet satisfaction.
He thought he won. He thought he got away with it.
He had no idea what was coming. After I set everything in motion, I didn't obsess. Weeks turned into months. Dean kept posting like he was living his best life, streaming games, showing off new gear, gushing over his new gaming chair like it was his soulmate. But I was patient. And then one random Tuesday, it happened. His tone online changed. Gone were the brag posts. In their place, panic, confusion. The replies were pure chaos. Some users told him to ignore it. Others warned him to get a lawyer ASAP. Spoiler: civil court doesn't work like that. And then he called me. The audacity, right? After months of silence, of leaving me to deal with the mess he made, he suddenly needed help. I let him talk. Let him squirm. Then I said, I guess karma's got a hell of a memory. And hung up. That moment. Pure satisfaction. I wasn't angry anymore. Just done. He had built his house of lies on a fault line. I just gave it a little nudge. And now the quake had begun. Dean, in all his wisdom, decided to follow the worst advice imaginable. He didn't show up to court. One of his online buddies, clearly a legal genius, told him that if he skipped the hearing, the court couldn't enforce anything. Just ghost them, bro. If you don't turn up, they can't do anything. Right, he ghosted. And the court didn't hesitate. What Dean didn't realize is that civil court is like clockwork. You don't show, you lose by default. The creditor gets a default judgment, which is basically a legal green light for all the consequences to start rolling in. Something about receiving a notice of enforcement. He clearly didn't understand what that meant, and boy, did they roll in fast. A couple of weeks later, his tone on the forums changed again, this time to full-on meltdown mode. He posted a string of panicked messages. I did. It meant bailiffs were coming. And then, the poetic justice, he posted a photo. His living room, empty. A few even called him out for flexing purchases made with someone else's money. It was the internet equivalent of watching someone trip over their own ego and faceplant in front of a crowd. A county court judgment is like a financial scarlet letter in the UK. It sticks to your credit report for 6 years. Makes getting a loan, a decent bank account, or even renting a flat a nightmare. His life wasn't just inconvenienced. It was systematically dismantled. Apparently, shiny toys and stolen money weren't enough to hold a relationship together once the toys were gone. Some employers check credit reports too, especially in finance or any job involving responsibility. They don't care about your sob story or your online clout. They want money. And if you don't have it, they take stuff that's worth money. End of story. Gone was the 4K TV he loved to brag about, the shiny gaming consoles. Vanished. That curved monitor, he said, elevated his productivity. Seized. Dina's life had gone from bad to worse in ways even he fully grasp at first. Even the fancy gaming chair he obsessed over like it was his throne, rolled right out the front door. They were the financial equivalent of a scarlet letter visible to anyone who checked his credit report for the next 6 years. And believe me, landlords, banks, and employers check. It was beautiful. Landlords see you as a huge risk, and they don't want their property tied up with someone who might not pay rent. Not a penny. And legally, there was nothing I could do without sinking even more money and time into an expensive court battle with no guarantee of success. That meant Dean was stuck with no decent place to live, forced to rely on temporary accommodations or crashing on friends' couches. Bailiffs don't play around once a judgment's in place. Dean tried to rally sympathy on the forum, but it backfired. Half the users roasted him for ignoring legal letters. No bank in their right mind would approve credit for someone blacklisted like him. His ability to rebuild financially was essentially frozen. After all, he wasn't exactly a typical university student when we met. Then, a few years later, he convinced his parents to fund a second chance, this time, a business degree at my university.
He was 26.
I was 22, the age gap raised eyebrows, but it was just a few years. Tuition fees, living costs, credit cards, he didn't manage his finances well. But what really sunk him was his pattern of dodging debts instead of facing them. He thought he could keep it all at arm's length, delay payments, and let time erase his problems. And I deferred my university start date to travel, so it made sense at the time. And that was just the beginning. Employers in the financial sector or positions requiring trust-due credit checks. I'm all ears. When the gadgets disappeared and his bank accounts dried up, she left. No more late-night gaming sessions or flashy tech to impress her, just a broke guy with a nasty reputation. His CCJs raised red flags everywhere. Suddenly, that dream of becoming an entrepreneur or working in any respectable office was out the window. Life choices, missed opportunities, and a refusal to take responsibility. Because with the default judgment came something else, a CCJ. Mostly about how important it is to trust your instincts and set boundaries, especially when it comes to money and respect. So yeah, Dean, blacklisted. He couldn't get credit, struggled to get approved for rental applications, and forget about landing a job in anything remotely professional. And as if the universe wasn't done with him yet, his side chick missed right time, right place, dumped him. I didn't break the law, I didn't lie. I just used the system he thought he could cheat. He took my money, but I took away his future, and all it cost me was £8.50. No more flat, no more gadgets, no more backup plan. Just Dean, broke, alone, and stuck with a ruined credit history he couldn't outrun. And me? I didn't get my £5,000 back. But I got something better, justice. The dust settled, but the fallout was far from over. Those county court judgments? They weren't just marks on a piece of paper. Getting approved for a rental property with multiple CCJs is almost impossible. Credit cards? Loans? Forget it. Job prospects? Also Grim and his side chick? She saw the writing on the wall. Despite all this chaos, I never got my £5,000 back. But that didn't matter. Because watching Dean's carefully constructed life crumble was its own form of payment. He had stolen my money, but I had taken away his future, and that was worth more than cash. I get asked a lot about how Dean racked up so much debt in the first place. Dean had actually started university years earlier when he was 18 but dropped out at 19. After that, he went straight into the workforce, bounced around jobs, and racked up debt. That's when he started accumulating more debt. Unfortunately for him, debts don't just disappear. And my little intervention reset the clock on several accounts, pulling him right back under the spotlight of debt collectors and court enforcement. So when people ask why a guy in his mid-20s had 6 years worth of debt stacking up there as your answer, I'm not proud of the whole situation. But I learned a lot from it. Dean's story is a cautionary one. And as much as it hurt me, the karma that followed was almost poetic. They say revenge isn't worth it, but sometimes it is. If you enjoyed this story of poetic justice, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment telling me the pettiest revenge you've ever pulled off.